Historic first, Ukraine hits a Russian submarine. Here's what we know. Christmas has come early, my friends. Ukraine may now be the new king of asymmetric warfare. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, says it used a previously undisclosed underwater drone, nicknamed the Subsea Baby, to strike a Russian submarine at Novorossiysk naval base on the Black Sea. They released a video showing an explosion near a moored vessel. They claimed the target was a Kilo-class submarine, the same class Russia uses to launch Caliber cruise missiles at Ukrainian civilians, by the way. Oh, and just for your reference, a Kilo-class submarine cost about $500 million. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran of the US Army and the Air Force. Let's jump right in. Russia, predictably, says, nothing happened, no damage, nothing to see here, move along, citizen. So at the moment, this sits in that familiar wartime gray zone. Ukraine says yes, Russia says no. Independent confirmation is happening right now, but here's the thing. Every time Ukraine claims to hit something, it always turns out to be accurate. And Russia's denials always turn out to be propaganda. We've seen this now for 4 years. But even if Ukraine didn't hit it, the attempt still matters because the capability being demonstrated is far more important than the single target. For most of modern naval history, submarines have had one ironclad rule. If you survived the patrol and you made it back to port, you were safe. Behind nets, behind patrol boats, behind sensors, behind layers of security designed to keep very bad things away from expensive submarines. And then Ukraine allegedly sent a robot swimming. Not on the surface, not screaming across the waves, but underwater. And according to Kyiv, that robot just crippled or outright destroyed a Kilo-class submarine at its own dock. Not only is that embarrassing, but that is a warning shot to every navy on Earth. When Ukraine sank the Moskva, it was dramatic. It was also, in a strange way, understandable. Big ship, open water, a moment of complacency exploited by modern missiles. A submarine at the dock is different. Submarines are supposed to be the quiet professionals of naval warfare. They survive by being unseen, unheard, and unbothered. Losing one while it's parked, powered down, and presumably guarded is a humiliation that cuts at institutional confidence. It tells every Russian submariner the same thing. If they can't protect you here, they can't protect you anywhere. Okay, so let's talk about the weapon Ukraine used. This is where people start imagining Xbox controllers and GoPro feeds, but that's not how this one works. Underwater is a terrible environment for real-time control. Radio waves don't travel well through seawater, GPS doesn't work well underwater, visibility is awful, the Black Sea is murky on a good day and basically Campbell's tomato soup on a bad day. So how would a Ukrainian UUV, an unmanned underwater vehicle, actually navigate? Well, the answer is autonomy and pre-programming. This thing is almost certainly not joystick-driven like a surface drone. Instead, it likely uses a combination of inertial navigation systems, which track movement from a known starting point, acoustic navigation using sonar pings and passive listening to orient itself relative to known structures or seabed features, waypoint guidance where the drone follows a pre-loaded route like an underwater TomTom. This would be less like a remote-controlled RC car and more like a fire-and-forget torpedo with a brain and better decision-making. The operator probably programs the route, sets the depth limits, defines the terminal phase, and then lets the vehicle do the swimming. Once launched, communications may be minimal or non-existent. And that's actually a feature, not a bug, because if Russia can't talk to it, Russia can't jam it. Now, the hardest part isn't swimming, it's the last few meters, or the terminal guidance. At close range, the drone likely relies on passive sonar or very short-range active sensors to identify a large metal object sitting exactly where intelligence said it would be. And ports are predictable environments. Submarines park in the same places, they follow the same routines, they sit still, which makes them surprisingly vulnerable to something that doesn't care about nets, tides, or return trips. Once contact is made, the drone doesn't need pinpoint precision, a shaped charge or a contact warhead detonating against the hull, propulsor or rudder is enough to mission kill a submarine. You don't need to sink it, you just need to turn it into a very expensive pier decoration. So let's talk about what Ukraine is claiming to have hit. The Project 636 Kilo class submarine is not really a museum piece. It's one of Russia's quietest conventional submarines these days. NATO nicknamed it the Black Hole for a reason. These boats are diesel-electric, but they are optimized for literal waters like the Black Sea, and they carry caliber cruise missiles. That makes them strategic assets, not just tactical ones. They take years to build, and they are not easily replaced under sanctions. And Russia doesn't even have many to spare in the Black Sea. They only have 6. If even one is damaged badly enough to be sidelined, that's fewer cruise missiles in the air, fewer launch options, and more pressure on surface ships that Ukraine has already spent 3 years terrorizing with naval drones. But I think the big takeaway here is this. Until now, submarines were vulnerable at sea to other submarines, in choke points, and occasionally to mines. But ports have always been safe havens. Ukraine is challenging that assumption. Surface drones already forced Russia to pull most of its Black Sea fleet out of Sevastopol. Now, Ukraine is reaching below the surface inside defended harbors. That's evolution. If Ukraine pulled this off, even partially, it forces a rethink. Harbor defenses were designed for divers, mines, and surface threats, not autonomous underwater robots with patience. Every navy now has to ask, how do we protect submarines in port? How do we detect slow, quiet UUVs? How much does that cost? And how many do we need? Ukraine just asked those questions for them. And unlike Russia, Ukraine doesn't have to defend global bases. It just has to make life miserable in one sea. Now, let's be clear. This claim is still being evaluated. Russia denies it. Independent confirmation is happening. But even if this specific strike turns out to be overstated, the direction of travel is unmistakable. Ukraine keeps expanding the battlefield, first in the air, then on the surface, and now underwater. The pattern matters. 3 years ago, Ukraine had no navy to speak of. Today, Russia's Black Sea fleet is scattered, cautious, and increasingly irrelevant. If submarines are no longer safe in port, then one of the last assumptions of naval warfare just died, quietly, underwater, and without a parade. Marco Ramius, eat your heart out. I hate the Red October. I've been on this bloody ship for months. And that should make every admiral very uncomfortable. This is how asymmetric warfare works at the strategic level. You don't have to win the sea, you just have to make the enemy doubt he owns it. Ukraine didn't just damage a submarine, it damaged the idea of sanctuary. This was not an isolated incident, it fits a pattern Ukraine has been building for 3 years. Ukraine keeps finding the seams in Russia's defenses and pushing just far enough through them to force a rethink. Each time, Moscow reacts instead of adapts. Because this isn't about Ukraine catching up, it's about Ukraine fighting a new war. A war that Russia doesn't really know how to win. That's it for today, my friends. If you want more breakdowns like this, from drones to doctrine to why very expensive Russian hardware keeps losing to Ukrainian robots, hit subscribe, it really helps out the channel. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.